Lovely. Well, thank you. It's lovely to see so many boxers here. Like a lot of you, I watched this show 41 years ago yesterday, and I was transfixed and probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing as a job now. Just the sheer craft of the Box of Delights, to see how it was so brilliantly put together. The acting, the story had been so well adapted, and just the craft of people like Alan. Alan has worked on some of the biggest shows of the 80s. He worked on EastEnders, Grange Hill, Just Good Friends, The Tripods, Life and Loves of a She-Devil, Rockcliffe's Babies, Carrot Confidential, and since the 80s, things like The Big Breakfast, Murder Most Horrid, Smith & Jones, and Time Team, which is amongst many others. So Alan, thank you so much for being here. So Alan was location sound supervisor on the Box of Delights. So I thought we could give us a bit of context really about, you've all been down the canal and been into the tunnels, to kind of get a bit of context into what you were seeing there and how those locations were used in the TV show. So first off, this was your home.
Yes, this is the truck we used. BBC outside broadcast trucks are also called scanners. It's a word that goes back to the days of John Logie Baird. But anyway, that was the scanner. And if you go to the next one.
Okay. This is, so basically what I wanted to do is take you through kind of some of the documentation. This hasn't really been seen before because up until last year, there were no documents in the BBC archive for Box of Delights. The folder was empty, there was nothing. And through a lot of people doing quite a lot of work, including Phil and Chris Chapman last year as well, and some of the people I talked to when I've been doing my interviews.
But mostly you, actually.
We managed to find people who had bits and pieces. And what we're seeing here, I'm going to stand up so I can see it, is we are seeing the actual call sheets for the days that filming went on here in Dudley. So this is the 21st of Feb. This is the first scene that was filmed here, and it was the Monk's Peace scenes, which is the scene where basically Kay has been to buy presents for the Blessed Joneses and comes back and very conveniently bumps into Abner, and he's watching then Abner and Rat having this conversation with Foxy and Charles. So yeah, basically you've got the whole team in at 9 a.m. in the morning, and then you've got Kay. So Devin would have been in from 3 p.m. in the afternoon. It also says that some snow is required, and if we move on here, you can see that in terms of props, they need Kay's parcels, some green cheese, and storm lanterns and 2 torches. So that was the first set of scenes that were done here, and that was done at the castle, wasn't it?
Yes. One of the things that logistically we couldn't get the truck into the tunnel, so the truck had to park on an industrial estate at the top. So we were up there, and all the action was happening down in the various caverns, which we couldn't easily get from the truck to the caverns. There was a way of going through the secret gate and in that way. But once they're in the water, you couldn't just walk on water, even on my grade. So you had very limited access to the scenes, and clearly we couldn't go follow the cables down because they were going down that precipitous thing into Shirts Mill Basin. So we were a bit sort of remote from it, but we could still sort of get very, very much involved with it. So.
Yeah. And in this scene, it's the big scene with Abner doing his big bit about power overall, and he was very much into it. Was as an actor, Bob Stevens was very much going from a whisper to suddenly this massive booming voice. You struck up a good relationship with him, didn't you?
Yes, Bob was an extraordinary character. And very early on, he sort of took me to one side. It was sort of, my dear chap, I can be a bit over the top. And he's used to sound guys always turning him down. Turning it down, give us a chance. But I pointed out, well, just do whatever you need to do. act as you see fit, and so long as you do it consistently, actors always are expected to hit their marks. So I explained it to him, I need to hit his marks in an acoustic sense as well. So long as he does it the same way every time, I can then accommodate whatever he does. And he loved that freedom, because he would then boom it out like that, and then whisper.
Which absolutely comes across. I mean,
Absolutely,
you captured
yes.
that and it all.
He wasn't. I've worked with more extreme people than that. Some that even pushed beyond the limits of what the technology could do, but I still found a way around.
Oh, well, we're dying to know who's the most extreme actor.
Well, I did go on a different production. I had somebody who went from the almost subaudible whisper to absolute bellowing. And technically, you can't accommodate that on one sound channel.
Right.
But we did it.
So then on Wednesday, the 22nd of February 1984, filming turned to the tunnels that you've all been in today. And if we look at the map of the site, which is
No,
there.
sorry, if you can go back one.
Yeah.
Bottom left, it says it's VPR 20.
Yes.
Now that said portable tape recorder. Now that came as news to me. It's something you sent to me just a day or two ago. Prior to that, I assumed that I'd been stuck in the van throughout the whole shoot. And I've told everyone, I was stuck in the van, they were down there. It wasn't like that at all. The VPR 20 is a portable tape recorder, battery operated. So if it was down in the tunnels, I must have been there as well. I've just forgotten about it. So I was indeed by that lock gate.
So I'm just having a look at what the props were this time round. We've got a paper to make a boat. So at this point in the script, the plan was, I guess, that they would have made a boat out of paper, which would then have become the boat that they get into. But obviously that never happened. Cole's Magic Keys, 1950s motorboat, very important. And yeah, so that's so this is the scenes that were the flooded dungeons and the interior of the dungeons as well. And this is a map of how everything was happening. So where were you?
If you don't mind me interrupting.
No, you.
If you look at this map and compare it to the one on the wall there, there's the 1989 canal tunnel from Castle Mill Basin obviously didn't exist. If you look in the top, there was like a branch line going down to Little Tess. But the branch line isn't showing there. So where on that map, roughly by the T of Nest tunnel, that's where the old tunnel was. And a lot of the action was done on the junction, the Y junction up there. I would also point out that on your boat trip, you went beyond the Hurst Coven and you ended up in Singing Coven. We'll come to that later, but I'll just point out Singing Coven doesn't appear on this map. And the reason why I mention that will come out later.
And Phil, the scenes that were filmed here are very much sort of the culmination and the climax of the Box of Tides, and probably where the TV series diverges most away from the book, certainly the unabridged book, where Masefield throws literally the kitchen sink into that book. And I mean, what do you make of Alan Seymour's choices? I mean, a lot of it was technological, but what do you make of his choices here?
You obviously have to adapt a book and to put it on screen. You're not literally putting everything there. There are a few. There are pretty minor differences. I'm interested by this newspaper to make the boat because actually Kay draws a boat. We all know that he draws a set of keys in the TV adaptation. Well, actually, he draws horses in the first in the book, so the horses break through the chains. But then he also draws a boat, and that then becomes the boat. So it's not a motorized boat. I love in the book that whilst he's drawing, he has wolves snapping at him. These little sort of almost like mosquitoes bothering him. So there's the book has got this progressive and sort of culmination of things coming together. The menace is quite intense. But yeah, I mean it's something that, as I was going through the tunnels, was great in that Masefield says that the boat is propelled at the end through people walking across the roof, using their feet to propel the barge along, which is exactly what was happening in the tunnels. So I don't know where he got it from, but Masefield is very much aware of how canal barges would go through. So yeah, there are differences, but actually it's a pretty good adaptation.
Very good. And it's so. What we're looking at here, Alan.
This is the inside of the scanner. This is where the production team work. Rennie would have sat at the desk here. We actually had a vision mixer lady called Sue Thorne, who's never credited on the programme. You can just see her head, somebody's head there. That's one of the engineers. They've got their own monitors. And right at the top under the loudspeaker is the main monitor. Round the back is a videotape machine. Over here, if you click to the next slide, is my sound desk. And you can carry on from there.
Do you have heating in there? Do you have heating in your in the? Because obviously
there was heating.
Certainly in Scotland, it was very cold.
We didn't have this truck in Scotland. Again, this is something that I'm convinced that we used this truck for the entire shoot. Janet and I had lunch with Mike Windsor, the cameraman, in February, and he reminded me that we didn't use this truck at all. But we'll come to that later as well.
So this is showing kind of where
just run the video.
Yeah.
This was about a year ago. So the trucks were, it was a bit jerky because everything was moving, but at the top there is where we have the trucks parked with the cables running down the vertical part. That's the Shirts Mill Basin, the first place you come to on the boat trip.
So then looking at the next day, this is Thursday the 23rd of February, and this is the sluice scenes with Abner having flour dropped on him. And in fact, I think if we move forward and we look at the props, yes, we have cash box, bag of flour, Cole's magic keys again, and the box of lights always appears in brackets for some reason. I have no idea why the box of lights always appears in brackets. But yeah, so these were the final scenes. So really, it was only 3-4 days that you spent here. But yeah, so that was what was going on the 23rd. Now there is on this previous one, it says sluice required. Now, what you may have noticed as you were doing this tour this morning is there is no sluice for Abner to drop off of. How did they get the sluice in here?
Well, they basically built it and lowered it down the big hole in the ground.
With a crane?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. But also, you didn't just need a sluice, you also needed higher water to flow down.
Yeah. So
they needed massive pumps, holding tanks, heaven knows what. And they also devised a sort of a ramp so that the boat could go onto the ramp, and a winch would then pull it up with water gushing down and all the excitement going on. And it was a very fraught operation. Health and safety haven't been invented, so we got away with it. You could never do it these days.
There's also catering on here, and actually, just to see the number of people, I don't think you can see it, but it says 55 people at catering on that day. 55 people, including Alan and 54 others.
That's a modest number by location drama standards.
So yes, so I mean, yeah, you know, this is the next bit is the most exciting thing in my book, but that's because I'm a bit of a geek. For years we struggled to locate the tunnel where Mariah is scrobbled. You know, she's scrobbled in Tatchester and then is driven into this tunnel under Chester's. And we've always tried to find out, this is the one location we've never been able to find where it actually is. Okay, actually, we've got these first. This is your demonstrations of how where things are.
This relates to. Can you press it to animate it?
Yeah.
That's the entrance to the tunnel, and if you press it again, that's where we park the truck, and again, and that's where we did the sluice gate. I'm not sure if there's anything else on this one. No? Have you gone on to the next one?
Yeah.
This slide relates to Maria's car when she was scrobbled. I'm not sure if when you had the boat trip, did they point out a rock tunnel high up on Singing Cabin? Well, there's been a mystery about where that scene was shot of Joe emerging from the car. I thought I knew where it was, but when we came to the museum to talk about it, they said, no, it wasn't there at all. And they explained it was shot in the rock tunnel, which goes from Singing Cavern, and if you press it again, a tunnel goes along to roughly there, which is a part over there somewhere. And if you go to the next, that's something completely different. But
and that's
on again.
Yeah. And this is showing the marine. So basically, the documentation says it was definitely filmed here, and that the car was driven into a tunnel here. And you found the tunnel there again.
Okay, now this is the rock tunnel, and that is absolutely the tunnel that the car was in, except it wasn't. But it's so convincing that we believed it to be true. If you carry on, this is a video.
Yeah.
This was taken from Singing Cabin. The tunnel is high up there. And onwards, and at the top, keep clicking. It goes down to here. Now that lower point, a car had been obviously you couldn't get a car into the tunnel at that high point, so it would have to have come in from the other end, which is what the canal truck told us. So I've been trying to find the other end of the tunnel, and it was my intention at one point to come here early and find that and reveal to you. I don't think it did. If such a thing existed, we would have had photographs of it published on the internet somewhere. A tunnel in a field in a park in Dudley. It's going to be photographed. So. There are sealed off tunnel entrance photographs, but they all relate to much nearer industrial effect. So that sort of left me in some doubt about whether that was really the case. If you go to the next one. So that's me in doubt. Next one. I talked to Rennie Rye, the director at the Time and Tide premiere, and when I asked him where that scene was shot, he said, it's in the tunnel by the wall. And that's exactly much my recollection. Obviously, it couldn't be done these days, but I believe there's been a lot of reconstruction of it. But what we did, there must have been some sort of wharf along here. The car was driven almost to the entrance of the tunnel. The whole tunnel was wetted down, a light at the far end, and the reason you wet it down is it reflects the light off the floor. You often see in films they will wet cobble streets at night to get a sort of rather pleasing effect. But obviously that's not big enough to get a car in, so they put black drapes over the car. And I know that was done because I went down and watched John Mason, the lighting guy, doing a thing where Jo was sat in the car and there's a really big close-up of her face, and John was obsessing about this tiny little light. He wanted to get a trap light in one of her eyes because that really conveys the the fear and the mystery. And he was going to so much trouble, and I was sort of admiring the way he was doing it. I've never seen anyone actually do that. Now, if Jo was in the car and I was there watching, I couldn't have been far away from the trap. So I would have been able to scamper back to the truck. If it had been in the tunnel at the far end, that would have been a boat ride, or couldn't have done it. So I'm totally convinced that that's where that Maria was unsquabbled, as it were.
Right. And Phil, I mean, the Mariah Abner confrontation is such an incredible meeting in the text. Doesn't really advance the story very much, but really just builds on the character.
It does, and I think what's quite interesting about the book is that Kay and Abner have so little interaction, but actually Mariah has as much interaction with Abner as well, probably more than Kay. I think this is typical of Masefield. He has dreamt up a character who's absolutely, he's this feisty homeboy, but absolutely taking no prisoners. The fact that he must meet Abner is this real this sort of meeting of different minds. I think it's typical of Masefield, but the character of Mariah, where the genius of Masefield transforms this from just a normal children's story into something else. He is quite a remarkable figure in children's literature. Quite a remarkable figure in 1980s children's TV. I mean, all that thing about Christmas should be brought up to date. It would have gangsters from the book. But yeah, there's this wonderful, feisty individual. I think a lot of it is built on his own daughter, Judith Masefield, who did the illustrations for the first edition of the book. She was, by all accounts, quite a tomboy. But also Masefield's wife, Constance de la Chaise Crumlin, was quite an aggressive feminist leader, really. Masefield spoke in 1910 about women's suffrage. Masefield is absolutely there at the fact that you've got the female protagonist is absolutely as valid as the male. And I think the point of adding Mariah in against Abner really emphasises that.
And when I spoke to Lady Stevens, she thought that Joe Duke was just incredible in that scene. And I mean, Alan, all the children, were extraordinary in Box of Lights. I mean, Devin carries the whole thing. What was it like working with them? And Devin's sister is here, Sabina.
Oh, he was a monster. Really were. They were absolutely brilliant. I've worked with far too many young actors from stage schools, and they are the worst. These were not stage school kids, or at least they weren't typical stage school kids. They were absolutely fabulous, every one of them. My own children at that time would have been about 9 or 11. So very comparable ages. I could relate to every one of the kids. They did a super job. And they were very mature in their approach for one so young. Very professional.
You also got to work with, legendary character actors. Patrick Troughton. We were talking. You were talking lots about Jimmy Grout. And how did you find working with these incredible actors?
They're wonderful. All of the actors were really lovely. Jimmy Grout was one of those people in the hotel afterward. Whatever you see on the screen is a fraction of the size of the character of this man. And personally, it was the duo of Jonathan and
Jeff.
Yes,
yeah.
They were just brilliant. They were always in scenes together, in private they were just the same. Very engaging, great fun. The life of every party.
That's brilliant. And Phil, the eternal game of who would you cast in a modern adaptation? So who are you casting as the police inspector?
So fantasy casting, it's a great idea, isn't it? We're going to remake the Box of Lights. Who would we like to have filling the role? I don't really have a police inspector in mind. I quite fancy the idea of having Branagh as the inspector, just because he's played Poirot on film. Let's have Poirot as the inspector. That'd be quite good fun. But then you sort of go into the realms of sheer lunacy. I'd love to have Judi Dench in a cameo role. Let's have her as the old lady. do very much, but let's have her there. But yeah, fantasy casting, you can have hours of pleasure.
And why aren't we seeing, a modern adaptation? I mean, Netflix are doing more Narnia, Lord of the Rings over at Disney, Harry Potter's also back. Why is there no Box of Delights 2025 style?
It all got stalled whilst there was a potential movie option. And so Mike Newell, who did Harry Potter and the Goblets of Fire and also For Weddings and Funeral, was going to do a movie adaptation of Box of Delight. And the production company paid a small fortune in rights and then kept renewing those rights. Having lunch with someone at the Society of Authors and saying, any more advance on this? He said, no, but they paid for another year. And so it went on. And whilst that happened, there was no way that, of course, that anything else would happen. When that stopped, then we got the Wilton's Music Hall because the theatre rights were available as in the movie rights. Why nothing has happened to a remake, I don't quite know. There was talk of the theatre version being adapted slightly, but I don't know. I mean, I would love, as I suspect everyone in this room would love, the Box of Delights to be shot again, although it will never replace the 1980s.
Have a go of hands who would like to see a new Box of Delights.
Interesting. So presumably, those who don't want to see a new Box of Delights don't want the magic to be spoiled. Right, you can
I'd like to work on them.
So of those people who don't want to see a new Box of Delights, how many of you, let's have a show of hands, went to see, for example, the RSC production of Stratford? And did that live up to expectation? They think you're all wrong. But yeah, I mean, it's a good question why no one will do it. Or whether or not there's one in the pipeline. I haven't heard any rumours so far.
I quite like to see a new one. So I do think the theatre production was amazing, and I was one of those people who said I don't want to see it remade. But actually, I saw that and thought, actually, I could see this remade. And done for a today audience that's maybe got a little bit more pace to it. I think my child. Some of you got your kids here. My son will watch it with me in sufferance. My daughter won't watch it with me at all. So I think maybe the pace up a little bit.
I think one of the things about the RSC production, and sorry for those who didn't see it, there were two things for me. The first one was the buzz in the auditorium. When certain magic effects worked, there was an absolute feeling in that auditorium that something special was happening on stage, and you felt it afterwards. People milling around afterwards. There was excitement. You had seen something quite. What Piers Torday had done in that adaptation was he'd said, look, I can't just start an audience off with a 1935 child coming home from the holidays. So he had a small sort of beginning section where the child was originally, it was in the back streets of Coventry, and it was a grandfather came talking to his grandson, and the grandson was going through crisis, his parents were getting divorced. And I said to Piers, is this really going to work? And he said, no, I think we've got to set it in some sort of context. Kids with parents getting divorced is a obvious, didn't happen in the 1930s, or you didn't hear about it. Let's try this. And I tell you that it worked beautifully on the stage in Stratford. And I saw it in rehearsal. And when I saw that scene first in rehearsal, I got a lump in my throat. And I thought, suddenly, there's a way of bringing this tale in front of a contemporary audience. It works. And that's the thing. If you get someone who can adapt it and bring it in front of a contemporary audience, I think it could work. You know what? I'd go and see it.
Yeah, no, same here. So, Alan, you'd worked on tripods, and this was kind of, I guess, seen by the BBC in a sort of similar vein. So
the two were happening more or less at the same time.
Yeah.
I was doing the post-production for Tripod, in between shooting Tripod, shooting Box of Delights, and doing the post-production for, doing the reshoot.
Yeah.
Because there was a strike, industrial action, basically caused the original schedule to be aborted in March time, something like that. And we then had to reconvene in June to pick it up. So I did a lot of stuff there, and we then started on series 2 of tripods. So
Yeah.
everything was all sort of interleaved.
You weren't booked for series 3, were you?
No. But yeah,
What did you think when you initially read the scripts? Because obviously you read them.
with Scripts for Children program, as I said before, at that time my daughter was 9, my son was 11. I tend to leave the scripts around and see if they pick them up. And my daughter in particular picked up the script and wouldn't give it back. And I thought, well, that's a good sign. I've only had that on one other program, which was a thing that Tony Robinson did called Boudica. I'm surprised anyone remembers. And they thought that was fabulous. But and from my part, I always make sure that I read the script initially, but I don't read the book until I've finished the script, because the book often fills in blanks and various things. And I want to get an impression of the story that we're presenting to the viewer rather than an interpretation of the book. So,
And can you believe that 41 years later, we're all sitting here talking about it?
well, when we made it, television was a very ephemeral process. Very few people had video recorders in those days. So basically, if you didn't catch it at whatever it was, you missed it. So the program was there and gone. So 41 years later, no chance.
And there was a lot of no in Box of Light. I'm sure, and some of it was convincing. Yeah. Let me take you back to Banchory near Aberdeen, January 1984. The Met Office had promised Rennie Rye that there would be snow. You turned up there. What happened?
Well, we had to fight through snow at the airport. The airport was a disaster area. And we got to the hotel at Banchory. It's like, nothing. And there's a very depressed looking Rennie. I'd heard stories that they were thinking of hiring a helicopter to go and see where the snow actually was, which I had put down in my mind as sort of Tony Guyan, the production manager, in his action man mode, let's hire a helicopter and fly off. Turns out he wasn't there at all. He was down here setting up, or Bewdley, or wherever it would have been Bewdley area setting up. But anyway, not only was the snow at the airport, Scotch Corner on the A1 was also snowbound, and all the lorries were tailing back, nothing could get past. And if you go to the next slide, the truck that I swore we used, press the button again, we actually used this. This is it's called SCU, small single channel unit, and it's not much bigger than a transit van. It's got a generator on the back. And it was able to get through. And that was a wonderful thing when that arrived at the hotel. It was just starting to slow, and the vehicle parked up, and we thought, well, at least we've got a truck. The caterers by then was stuck in the snow. The art department trucks were all stuck in nothing could get past Scotch Corner, because the moment one lorry skids across the road, that's it, game over. So fortunately, the driver of that truck, he knew of the problems, and he basically left early and made sure he got past where he needed to.
And the snow arrived.
Boy, did the snow arrive. It was just incredible. I've never seen the transport. Can you imagine opening your bedroom window the following morning and seeing what we saw? It was just, and Rennie was over the moon. That guy's face. We had to have a very strict rule that people had to stick to certain tracks in the park. You couldn't go off track, because you'll spoil the virgin snow for everyone else. And similarly, for every scene we shot, we had to have an alternative a little bit further along in case it needs to be reshot, because you can't have them falling onto the snow if it's already prepped. So
yeah, and then you had You caught up with your colleagues, the cameraman.
Now, if you go to the next shot, this is a chap called Mick. He's a cameraman, as you might guess. He's the cameraman who worked on the SU vehicle, just as Mike Windsor was the cameraman who worked on the LPU truck, the big one. But for continuity reasons, Mike came along as a supernumerary to make sure that what Mitch did was consistent with what Mike was proposing to do for the rest of the team. Unfortunately, in the chaos at Aberdeen Airport, Mitch's luggage got sent to Scandinavia. And his luggage included all his thermal gear, his big coat, his boots, because you're not going to take all that as hand baggage. So Mick couldn't do any of it at all. Fortunately, we had a spare cameraman on site, Mike Windsor, and he stepped in all his finery, his clothing, and did the shot. However, Mick, he had a daughter who was a journalist. And she became famous as a writer. Do you want to go to the next one? This is Mick. This is his daughter. I'm not sure if anyone recognises E.L. James. His official name is Alistair Mitchell. He's always in the sheet as A.J. Mitchell. The J stands for James. Erica, she needed a nom de plume, and he used Dad's middle name as her thing. So if it wasn't for the luggage being sent off to Scandinavia, all the sequences in the snow would have been shot by E.L. James's dad. For anyone who's E.L. James wrote 50 Shades of Grey.
You ever writing
and I've never seen a father and daughter look more.
Have you ever thought of writing a bibliography of E.L. James?
Bibliography.
Was there any reason why John Masefield set this story at Christmas, or was it just kids like Christmas?
Kids like Christmas, love Christmas. I think the interesting thing is when he started it, Masefield always dated his manuscripts, and it was dated in January 1934. So he's just come out of the Christmas period, presumably putting the Christmas decorations away. I thought, I really enjoyed that. I know, let's start the story again, coming home for Christmas. So yeah, it started in January 1934, which I think is kind of interesting.
And Alan, the scenes in Scotland really sold the magic of the series. It looks amazing, but how is it working in those conditions? I'm guessing it's cold.
It's cold.
Yeah.
Yes. It's actually very good in some respects because snow kept everyone at home. They couldn't get out. Normally, when you're shooting period dramas, I'm not sure we established a period between the wars. What you don't want is modern vehicles and aircraft and all that sort of thing. And there weren't any. It's wonderful. You don't get that in the real world normally. But on the top of that, it was a very peculiar atmospheric condition. It was a very clear blue sky, and the sound carried in a way that, I suppose it was the snow on the ground, made the sound carry in a way that it never normally does. And we were able to do bigger, wider shots and still pick up the dialogue with clarity. And it, of course, appealed to Rennie, and I was happy with it. The only things we did have problems with for Noises Off was snow clouds. We didn't really think we could sensibly send somebody up to do it.
And then we move on quickly. This is the picture that you took, which is still on your wall in the living room, my dining room. Yeah, onward. That's amazing.
That picture has been in my dining room for 2 houses for 40 years. I don't think I've got many other pictures that have been up for anything like that length of time.
And you can't really beat that as a location. But Box of Delight actually, did all the way through. Every episode seemed to bring an even more amazing location. I know your favourite is Wasslewood House or Sea Kings.
Oh yeah. Now that was It was such an amazing location. The house, you couldn't really imagine. I mean, that was Sea Kings, wasn't it? You know, they copied Sea Kings from. But from a filming point of view, it was absolutely perfect because access is along a very long, narrow road, so there's no passing traffic. There's nothing nearby. There are extensive views from everywhere in the house. No neighbours to complain about noise of vehicles, lights, anything like that. And the house itself, the six of the rooms, they were irregular rooms. Some of them were wood panelled. There's a library and various other things. From an acoustic point of view, they're absolutely brilliant to work in. It made it so much easier. And they're also, being a real house, it's much easier for the actors because they can, you get this sense of this is our home. Whereas if you're in a set in Television Centre, that's not home.
And
It's a bit like on period dramas when people wear Edwardian costumes and things, and particularly on the sort of things where they make ladies wear the underwear from Victorian or Georgian times. It sort of brings them into character better.
how did you get caught up in blowing up part of East?
Well, that was
Wasn't your fault, obviously. But,
yeah. Special effects are always good for a laugh, if nothing else. They're great people, but one of the earliest things we shot was on the top of one of the turrets at Eastnor Castle. They had an explosion and bits had to fly up in the air, and the specialist effects people thought, oh, that worked really well. So they used the same charge for the next thing and the next thing. And one of them was in a turret where there was like a path through the middle. And they put the charge in there, and the idea was a smoke grenade and a bang, and somebody runs out in panic, and red flashing lights, and how you make all these things up. What they'd overlooked is that when you have an explosion in a semi-confined area, like under an archway, it's much more powerful. And above there, because the red light that was supposed to come on to simulate fire and smoke, there was an electrician. And when the explosion went off, basically the floor came up. It cracked the window in this Grade 2 listed castle. And one of the secrets of getting really big sounding explosions is you use two microphones, one close to the explosion to get the loud bang, the impact, and you have another one pointing at basically the Malvern Hills or whatever it is around there, Herefordshire, which gets the rolling echo, and that gives it a sense of scale. And so by I recorded them on separate tracks so I could cross them. But when I subsequently listened to the explosion one, it's followed by something I probably can't repeat here, which was the electrician above, who, let's say, expressed surprise.
and that explosion you recorded, you used that again.
That was so big. When I subsequently went on to do Like an Ultra She-Devil, the director was one of those people who wants everything turned up to 11 all the time. And there was a very similar thing where, for those who watched She-Devil, the lighthouse that the main heroine lived in was also blown up. And he wanted some explosions of this. And it was very similar scale to the turret. And he just wasn't satisfied with any of the explosions. And I said, I think I know the one that did it. So I got the tape out and, yes, that's the one.
And what were the issues recording here in the tunnels? Because having spoken to Carol Fraser, who plays Caroline Louisa, what I think when you were going through the tunnels, what you didn't realise is, well, you realised how deep that was. When you see it on the TV, it looks like they're sort of wading through water up to about sort of there-ish. And what is happening underneath is there's a load of planks and some scaffolding. They're walking on that, and there's like a guide rail about there that they're keeping their leg against, because if they don't, they fall off and they end up under the water. So I can only imagine, how Carol described it as the conditions as not great. But for a sound man, how was it for you?
Well, tunnels are the worst thing ever, because as you might imagine, they echo somewhat.
Yeah.
And I think the next slide. No, there isn't the next slide. Anyway, there was. Oh no, keep going. This is Pete Hales. He was the boom operator on all throughout this shoot and many others I worked with, and he was so good at coping with impossible situations. And I can't remember whether he worked from a boat or I don't think he was wading through the water because that make too much sloshing noise. But
no, hard work. Let's turn now to wolves. Phil, what's the symbolism of wolves in Box of Delight?
Can you go to the next one?
Funnily enough, I knew you were going to ask this question. So I looked. I started one. Do you want to?
Let's just quickly go back. There's a wolf.
Oh, back one. Sorry.
Oh, back one.
Add again.
Okay. There we go. Sorry. Carry on.
So wolves. There are the 3 or 4 things which I think are quite interesting about wolves. Firstly, is that when Masefield writes to his American publisher, he calls the book The Box of Delight or When the Wolves Were Running. The very first time he announces it to his American publisher, that's what he calls it. I don't know about the English publisher because those letters don't survive, but obviously When the Wolves Were Running is part of the book. These are unpublished letters, and so actually I can guarantee that no one has heard these or read these since the initial recipients. But in 1965, Masefield wrote to one of his young ladies about the winter. And I think this is really interesting. He says, "The winter slowly drags along. But think of England under Alfred the Great, when the wolves were about on all roads from tea time until after breakfast. The breakfast possibly being yourself." So I love this sense that old England is the England of wolves. But the other thing that comes back is, for me, one of the interesting things is Masefield and children's books. He'd written The Midnight Folk before, which is another Kay Harker story. But before that, you need to go back a decade and a half before his last children's books. Those were written purely to make money. He was an impoverished writer at the time, and Jim Davis, Martin Hyde, Book of Discoveries are all absolutely to make some money out of the children's literature market. Going a little bit further back, Masefield obviously told stories to his own children. And this is where I think it becomes really interesting. You hear about Tolkien started stories for his own children. Masefield is absolutely adept at telling stories. 1910, he is telling a story to his daughter, Judith. Judith wasn't very well. Masefield was writing a report of him telling this story. And it was called a Lender story. Lender was the heroine. So Masefield said in February 1910 to Elizabeth Robbins, he said, "I told the Lender story for the next 45 minutes without a moment's pause. Go on, won't you? Go on, father." This is Judith speaking. "Now draw Lender going over the impassable plain. Draw the wolves coming and the spiky dragons." Lender had a bad time, for when Judith is ill, she needs something out of the way to move her. Her last adventure was being flung from a catapult over the impassable plain into the unswimmable river. I love that, but this is, again, wolves feature as early as 1910 in a story that Masefield tells his daughter.
And Alan, was there a decision taken? One sound you don't hear in this production of Box of Delights is the sound of a wolf howling. And I just wondered, was that a creative decision? Was it just too much of a cliche?
Well, basically, wolves don't. In our story, the wolves are always running around. Wolves, when they howl, they sort of, howl at the moon or whatever. So it didn't really seem appropriate. But we did need the sound of the wolves actually running about. And that was an interesting one anyway, because obviously, up in Scotland, you couldn't just let wolves loose because they're dangerous creatures. So those scenes had to be recreated at the Butler's farm near Reading, where they built a huge enclosure, and the wolves could be contained. Now, the wolves that we used there were almost like pussycats. They were really lovely. Whereas the dogs that pretended to be wolves, they were vicious little things. They were frightening. But if you go to the next slide, now, I've worked with various top predators before. Now, they're always obsessed with the microphone. They basically want to eat it. So if you can just run through the next few slides to this is the wolf farm these days. Now, when in 1984 they were kept more or less as pets, with a lot of contact with humans, and when it came to I needed the sound of them running about, they said just take the microphone into the enclosure and a tape recorder, run away, and they'll follow. And I said, yeah, I bet they will. But they did.
That was your fastest 100 metres.
Yeah. And it was just a case of taunting them with the microphone, and they would follow.
And you got this. You've also been back, haven't you? You've been back to the.
Well, these pictures were taken about a year ago. Just keep going. There's a bit of video at one point as well. Now, they don't have contact with humans anymore. So there's no way I would go anywhere near these ones. They would attack as soon as look at you. I think that's a video if you run it. You basically wouldn't want to be on the wrong side of that.
And they've kind of closed it down now because didn't one of them escape?
Oh, they breed for zoos and conservation projects. It's a very grown up and again. I don't know how the dog got away with it. Okay.
Yeah. Now we're spoiled these days with digital technology, but I imagine that analog post-production was quite difficult, and particularly when you think about the time of year that you were having to make the Box of Delights. You've got all these people queuing up. You've got the two on his Christmas special. You've got Just Good Friends, Penny and Vince, Will They, Won't They, in 1984. The first episodes of Joan Hickson's Miss Marple were all angling to get in and be post-produced into those limited BBC resources. I'd also imagine that children's TV was bumped down the schedules as well. So how did that all go?
Well, the BBC only had one really big dubbing suite in the television thing. I think is it the next picture? This is actually during the. If you go to the next picture, this was a promotional picture when Prince Charles visited. That better shows the sound desk. And if you go back one, no, back one. Sorry, to the original. So this is where we did most of the post-production work. I would sit at the desk over there. This is the console used by the chap who plays in the sound effects and tape recordings of stuff that I've recorded on site. Because there was only this one suite of this complexity, it was very much in demand. But fortunately, because Box of Delights was so long in the planning, and we booked it a long time in advance, which meant we had all the time we needed, but we didn't have any opportunity for overrunning. So we absolutely had to keep to schedule, and effectively each episode had to be done in one day. And if you talk to people who make films these days, then you're insane, you can't do it in one day. But that's how it was in those days. These days you would spend probably a week or two on each episode. And also you'd be using, we were using analog tape, 8-track tape machines. If you want to go into record, you have to, 5 to 10 seconds run up, and then you do the thing and you have to rewind. These days you can do things by pressing a button and it's all happening. We could probably reproduce almost everything there on a laptop with clever software these days. But that was then. This is now.
And I remember you saying that you loved the cyclical nature of the job that you did on Box, because you were actually completing the final bits on episode 6 as episode 1 went out.
That's right. That thing where you all put your hand up saying, did you watch the... I didn't actually watch it live. I was sat there. Just finishing. We would have been approaching the end of episode 6 when it went out. And then afterwards, when it finished, we went up to the bar. Was it a Wednesday that it went out? I can't...
Yeah.
Wednesday was Top of the Pops Day at Television Centre. So up in the bar, it's always rammed with everyone hoping to see the pop stars of the day. But we didn't care. We just finished Box of Delight. We had a great time.
And all the cast and crew that I've spoken to along the way always look back on Box very, very fondly. Was it a job that you're particularly proud of?
Oh, absolutely. You have to make the most of most when you're on location for 3 months. You have to make the most of it, whatever people you're working with. You didn't have to make the effort on this production. They were absolutely brilliant people to work with. I've worked with many of them since, and they were just as good then. The cast and crew reunion.
Yes, last year. Yeah.
Still
to that?
No, keep going. And one more. Oh, no. Shall we just talk about this one?
About this one, yeah.
Lots of things have come to light in the last few months, or in some cases, the last few hours, that show my memory isn't what it was. When people were trying to find locations, where was this scene shot? I swore that it was a studio shoot because I had no recollection of it whatsoever. But Tony Guyan came up. If you go to the next picture, this is a cottage near Eastnor Castle. It has to be where we shot the scene. There is no doubt whatsoever. It's just another thing. 40 years on, you forget all about these because there's so much happening.
And you can hire cottages at Eastnor Castle, so
yeah,
they're very expensive. I looked.
Yeah.
But
do you want to go on a bit more? There might be more things before we. This is the Carmel. This is the casting pit. So this is the people who turned up for the cast and crew reunion. 40 years on.
It was a brilliant night. It was,
I'm not sure if not sure if I've got a crib sheet.
There's Rennie and Devin.
Yeah.
Mike's lyrical. And there's the back of my head.
Yeah.
And
if you go back, we can try naming people.
Let's see us.
So we've got Devin,
Waterfall Boy.
Mouse was
over. Yeah.
Sorry, that's Waterboy.
Yeah.
Steve Newnham, video editor.
Yeah, Jeffrey Larder.
The couple.
Yeah.
Next to there is
Jeffrey Larder and his wife.
Jeffrey and Leslie Larder.
Yeah.
Leslie was the makeup girl on Box of Lights. They're married. They weren't married then. I assume that they got together on that. Next to Leslie is Heather, the makeup supervisor. Some bloke called Rennie, I've no idea what he did, or the bloke next to him. The Angus, one of the Greek soldiers.
Greek soldiers, yeah.
I can't remember his name, visual effects, Tony something. And yeah, one's visual effects, one is special effects. I can't remember which switch now without my crib sheet. Standing up on the left is
Peter.
Crispin,
Peter.
Yeah, Pete. I've forgotten her. Not Flora. It's Flora. It's just Flora. Yeah. Chris Chapman directed the documentary. Costume designer. Can't think. No, she's the actress.
Caroline Louisa.
Hello. Yeah. Sorry. Costume designer next. Roger Lim, Tony Guyan, and
Mouse.
mouse.
Yeah. You know, it was an amazing evening to be at, and there were a few of us there. You were there more legitimately than I was, because you know, Masefield's a big thing to you. I was only there because I gave them a load of phone numbers for the people that they needed to talk to. But no, it was a brilliant night. Phil, you know, 90 years of the box this year. What amazing celebrations apart from this one.
This is it. Yeah. No, I mean the publisher has changed. It's now a HarperCollins book, but the text is all exactly the same, except because it's changed publisher. The publishers have brought out, or are bringing out in the next few weeks, I believe, a new audio full text audio version. So that is, I suppose, the nod to it being 90 years. But there aren't any great big celebrations apart from you, lovely lots.
Hey. Well, look, thank you, Phil. Thank you, Alan. You know, thank you, Alan, for your part in this, in just creating this amazing show that you can see the love in the room for this show still resonates today. We still watch it every year.
Well, the love was on both sides of the camera.
Oh, that's lovely to know. And you inspired this man to become a scholar, or was that your mum?
That was my mum. Yeah. Yes. Thank you, mum.
Cool. But thank you very much, Phil.
Thank you.
Thank you.